So first, Your Excellency, I want you to look out over this room. We have, for Kauffman Fellows, I'd like to ask you, if this is your first time in Africa, please raise your hand. If this is your first time in Kenya, please raise your hand. This is a big group of investors that have come to see your country. You know, at Kauffman Fellows, this is a room that represents global leaders in venture capital. They actually manage about 300 billion in AUM, which P.S. Tanui talked about. They also are responsible for about 8.5 trillion in exits. They work hard. What we hear about you, Your Excellency, is that you don't sleep. You actually work really hard too. I've been to meet with you many times at State House, and sometimes it says we're going to come at 7 a.m., and sometimes it says we're going to come at 7 p.m. They said, because he's still working. How do you do that?
I'm hired by the people of Kenya to do it.
Okay.
But, and because I have a job to do, I must not only do it, but I must be seen to be doing it. But let me take this opportunity. I'm just amazed at the number of people who are coming to Africa for the first time and coming, of course, to Kenya for the first time. And whenever I speak to some friends, including my friend, the American ambassador, she tells me often that when she was running HP, she thought about Africa 1% of her time. I can see there are many people who are thinking 1% of Africa, especially in this room. But let me say the following, that on my own behalf and on behalf of the people and government of Kenya, welcome to Kenya. And welcome to Africa. And let me just say two things. Nairobi, as you have seen, is a city with a big canopy on this side of a forest, but on the other side you have a national park. So, and we have wildlife in the national park. We have a fence to keep the wildlife inside the park. But as you know, sometimes they do what wildlife do. So when you walk in the city of Nairobi and you find a lion, please be careful. It is not tamed, it is wild. Secondly, I'm trained as a scientist. And science has scientific evidence to show that about 300 kilometers from where you are sitting are the first remains of man, which are found in Kenya. And it therefore tells you that before you guys went to the US and Australia and Europe and Asia, we all started from here. And therefore, it is correct for me to tell you, welcome home. Away. One final thing, I know many of you were asked for visa when you came to Kenya. We are having a conversation as Kenyans, so that possibly by the end of this year, you will not need a visa to come to Kenya. And because it just makes perfect sense that nobody is asked for visa when they are going home. It's just natural. So, welcome home.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, you are an entrepreneur and an investor. As an investor, it means that you could actually be the first head of state to be a Kauffman Fellow. And then we could get you one of these pairs of socks. Your personal journey has been one taken from a small village to the presidency. How have the experiences that you've seen from that journey influenced you as a president of this nation?
I think it's just, it is true that it's been quite a journey, but that also speaks to the opportunities that exist in Kenya. The same way a village boy could become president is the same way a small company, an MSME, can become a multinational. And that's what it is. You know, M-Pesa, for example, is a Kenyan innovation. It's now become a multinational in many respects, whether it is their footprint in our continent or their footprint in the technology, the financial inclusion technology they have provided. And it speaks to the nature and the orientation of not just the people of Kenya, but Kenya as a country. And when I speak to people like the great people sitting in this audience today, I will tell them, if you're looking for a destination of innovative, creative, hardworking, English-speaking people, your destination is here. And when I talk about creativity and I talk about innovation, it's not in word, it is in deed. And it is the reason why we are expanding that opportunity. Kenya being the home of innovation and technology. And it is also the reason why this week I will be in Silicon Valley, because we want to combine the opportunities in Silicon Valley with the opportunities in Silicon Savannah, right here in Kenya. And it is because I believe we have so much to learn from Silicon Valley, just as we have so much to offer to them, especially in the opportunities that exist not just in Kenya, but in our continent. Let me say the following. We've just concluded the climate summit. And the climate summit was about three things. In summary, it's about potential, it's about opportunity, and it's about money. Just three things. Potential because we have the largest renewable assets that can power innovation, industrialization, manufacturing, renewable energy. We have the largest reserves of natural minerals. We will have 40% of the world's workforce by 2100, 25% by 2050. We have the youngest population, innovative, creative, educated. And when I say educated, if you take, for example, Kenya, we are spending 29.5% of our budget, which is something like $5 billion on education, because that's where we have the majority of our people. And we believe that this workforce of the future should be equipped with skills, with knowledge, with competence, and be provided with opportunity to explore their full potential. And that is why we're spending 30% of our budget on education, skills development, university, college education, because we want to prepare this world workforce for opportunities of tomorrow. And it is also the perspective that I would want us to give, because apart from knowledge, we are also looking at how do we bring technology home. It is the reason why the government of Kenya, we're now deploying technology. And I dare say homegrown technology, e-citizen, that we are using to digitize the entire government infrastructure. And I have given the people of Kenya my commitment that by the end of this year, every government service will be on a digital platform and will be available online. Meaning we can be much more efficient, we can be much more effective, and we can eliminate unnecessary barriers, including being much more accountable. Somebody is saying I've said enough. Okay, maybe.
They should be turning my mic off instead of yours. Your Excellency, you mentioned the Climate Summit. You have a PhD. You also mentioned science. You have a PhD in science. And you just hosted the Africa Climate Summit, where many heads of state signed the Nairobi Declaration. Why do you see this as so important? Why are you so passionate about this? And what should this group of investors know about what the Nairobi Declaration means and what the work that you did at the Climate Summit means for the future?
It's because, narratives are very powerful. For a very long time, Africa was profiled as this continent of conflict, war, disease, and all the negative things. But that's not what these guys are seeing in Nairobi, right? But that's not what we are. We are a continent of opportunity. We are a continent of great potential. And the Nairobi Declaration, my hosting of the Nairobi Climate Summit, is so that we can showcase to the world that there is a different side of Africa. One African writer is called Chinua Achebe. He said, before the lion learned the art of writing, all stories glorified the hunter. Because the stories were written by the hunter, and he always made himself the king. People did not know that the lion may even be better than the hunter. So it's time we write our own story, And the Climate Summit gave us an opportunity to showcase to the world that you have countries like Kenya that have 93% of their electricity grid being green, renewable energy. Many people don't think that that is a possibility, but we've been able to demonstrate to them that is a possibility. And we intend to make our grid 100% green by 2030. And we are well on course in getting it there. And because we live in one globe, there is no north versus south. There is no emitters versus non-emitters. We live in one globe, and if things were to get out of control, none of us is safe. So it is time we began to be responsible. And Africa wants to lead the way. Kenya wants to lead the way. Even as I talk to this investing community here, we're telling them that as you invest in Kenya, have at the back of your mind that you are investing in Kenya in a sustainable environment, in an environment that is responsible to nature, that is aware that fossil fuels, the exploitation of fossil fuels, what is happening to our environment, what is happening to the climate, the effects cyclones, droughts, famine, and everything that comes with it. Today, we're told that in Europe, they are experiencing the hottest ever summers, including people being evacuated from beaches, because climate change is real. It is not a myth. And I am saying this as a scientist myself, so that people can begin to understand that it is good for us to invest responsibly, making sure that that investment promotes a world that we can not only enjoy ourselves, but we can bequeath to generations to come, because we have done so responsibly by using the kind of energy that supports biodiversity, that gives us an opportunity to reduce the carbon footprint, and making sure that we decarbonize our manufacturing, our industrialization. For example, Konza City, which is our silicon savanna, we're making sure that the energy that is being used on all the operations there, whether it is the data centers, whether it is everything that we are offering to the world, is powered by green energy, so that people understand that there is opportunity globally to be able to do that, and to be able to do business, run our enterprises, run our manufacturing and industrialization, but being also responsible to our environment, to humanity, to biodiversity, and to where we need to go into the future.
Yes. Mr. President, you took office about a year ago, September this time last year. And in that time, through leadership in areas just like you discussed in climate, you've been named one of the top 50 global leaders in the world. In thinking about that, you've now focused on the AU, the African Union, is now part of the G20, and that's something that you've spoken very openly about. Why is that so important for the future of Africa, for the future of Kenya, and why is that so important for entrepreneurs to be able to build great companies in this continent?
You know, Africa, because of our background, was fragmented by colonialism and subdivided into pieces. What we've been doing as leaders in this continent is to consolidate the African market into one single market. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area, an instrument that has been signed in by 47 out of 55 countries in this continent. I think the fastest instrument to be signed ever in our continent, is because of the realization that this continent would do better acting together, acting in concert, rather than acting separately. That is why we are focused on the reform of the AU to make it a fit-for-purpose organization to harness the potential of this continent, whether it is the human potential of about 1.5 billion people, by 2050, 2.5 billion people. Actually, a quarter of the world will be living here in this continent by 2050. How do we harness the mineral resources we have that are there in abundance? How do we harness the opportunity for smart agriculture? We have 2/3 of the world's uncultivated arable land. We can double, if not triple, grain production. How do we harness this potential? And that is why we are focused on the African Union as an institution. We are focused on its reform. And our participation, of course, in the G20 will give us the platform for us to position ourselves in terms of being a market, to position ourselves in terms of ensuring that we can bring our perspectives, our ideas onto the global space, so that we can influence global policy and trends to make sure that they are sensitive to where we come from as a continent and as a people. I keep using this phrase that it is said that if you are not on the table in the discussion, you possibly could be in the menu. So I think we've been in the menu for far too long.
You're setting the table.
It's time.
Your Excellency, you are an entrepreneur, and you're passionate about technology and entrepreneurship, especially as it impacts the rising generation in Kenya and in Africa. We have a room full of global investors. What would you want them to know about the Kenyan ecosystem that shows them? We've heard a lot about Kenya's open for business, Nairobi's open for business. What would you want them to know about their investments and the potential for investments here in great entrepreneurs in Kenya?
A couple of things. We are leading the way as government of Kenya in leveraging on technology, using technology to deliver government services, as I have said. Government services, we've just distributed fertilizer for the first time in Kenya using technology. We are reaching out on our services to vulnerable communities, about 1.5 million of them, using technology. This morning, and I apologize, I think there was a conflict in my diary. This morning...
We were just getting ready for you, it's okay.
This morning, I was presiding over our Central Bank of Kenya's CSD platform, where it will now be possible to buy government securities on a digital platform by Kenyans or investors from anywhere in the world without having to bother to go and open an account in Central Bank. You can open an account on your phone. That is the level of use of technology to run the affairs of Kenya. That's number one. Number two, I want to tell this investing community here, apart from being a tech or technology understanding country, there is a whole opportunity, not just around Kenya, but using Kenya to get into the East African community, about 7 countries, to get into the tripartite treaty, which is about 27 countries, or to get into AFCFTA, that will take you to 47 countries with a potential of 55 countries. That is the opportunity that you have, number one. Number two, we are aligning our laws. The startup bill that hopefully we should be able to complete in the next 2 or 3 months will also provide a space for investors to use Kenya, not just as a destination for investment as a country, but to use Kenya as a place where you can deliver your investment opportunities beyond Kenya into the African continent. And number three, we are aligning all the opportunities so that you can also tap into our young people with fresh ideas, with creative opportunities, with innovative talent, to maybe start one of the largest companies. M-Pesa, even if M-Pesa is anything to go by, we have a reservoir of many other young people who can do what M-Pesa has done.
Mr. President, you are a voracious learner. You are someone that values knowledge. You're constantly seeking for knowledge. I'm sure that makes you a reader of books, Where do you have any, give us a little inside scoop to where you get your best sources of information. What's your favorite book or your favorite place to get information? Is it Twitter/X? Where do you like to get your information? How do you stay informed and stay educated?
I forage a lot in many spaces. And I like the fact that even books nowadays are available online. And you can do a lot of reading, let me not say a bit, a lot of reading in that space. And there is a lot of available information. I am, of course, privileged because being president, I have a lot of briefs from many people. And they can be quite messy, you know? There are mountains and mountains of briefs, and you have to really be avid to be able to read. But many people out there have a lot of talent, and I must be grateful that sometimes I look intelligent for no effort that I have made. Many people have made so much effort to put things together for me to read and to understand so that I can push the agenda of the country. So there is a lot of reading to be done online. There is a lot of briefs that I get. There is, of course, the things that I like to read on the side that have nothing to do with all this, and have nothing to do with science, which I read in college. But that's roughly the space.
Soon you'll be able to take those mountains and just plug it into ChatGPT, and they'll just give you a summary. Mr. President, my final question for you is a two-part question. The first part would be, as you look over this audience and they are in your city, your country, what advice do you have for them for their time here, your favorite restaurants, the things that you don't want them to miss while they are in your hometown? That's part one. Go ahead with that first one.
Oh, that's great. Let me first, I think it was quite bold of people who have not been here before to take the decision. When you asked me to host, for Kenya to host these Kauffman Fellows, and I said yes, I didn't know that it was going to be this big. So congratulations to everybody who've made their way here. And I am very sure that it won't be the last time you're here. I know you have found your home in Kenya. The beauty of this city is that you can get any mall, any restaurant that is as good as anywhere in wherever you've come from. But you also have unique places. I would suggest to you, find time and go to Bomas of Kenya, maybe, if you want to have to have a taste of Kenyan culture. Find time and go to find some favorite Kenyan cuisine at different places, either Safari Park. You will find the safari cats there, and you will find a lot of meat. And you will be served different cuisines, and it is a wonderful opportunity. You can also go to Carnival. Carnival is just across the other side of the city, next to the national park. You will find some game meat. If you haven't eaten crocodile meat, if you haven't eaten all the other game meat, but they are licensed, so you don't have to worry. So you can sample all that, or you can find some of the coffee shops right in this mall around here. The coffee shops are really good, and don't miss to eat ugali. Ugali is the local staple food. It's made out of corn or maize, for that matter. In fact, for Kenyans, we eat that meat, that pounded ugali for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. And from Monday to Monday. And sometimes 365 days. And it never gets boring. So it's something to taste.
Thank you, Mr. President. My final question for you is, this is our 13th Global Summit and our first Global Summit on the continent of Africa. We chose to come to Kenya as part of our discussions, and we're so grateful for you welcoming us here. As we think about this group in Kauffman Fellows, we care deeply about the human element of technology and innovation. You have made it a big part of your leadership to also focus deeply on humans and on individuals. What advice would you give to this group of global leaders on the future and how you would encourage them to be the best version of themselves as leaders?
As you've said, our philosophy is bottom-up. Making every person count, irrespective of their station in life. It's about humanity. And it's about minding about people, whoever they are, whatever their status, whatever they look like. White, yellow, black, whatever. And it is the reason why part of our plan is food stability and food security, to make sure nobody sleeps hungry, whoever they are. Financial inclusion is the reason why we rolled out what we call Hustler Fund. Today, courtesy of technology, Hustler Fund, which is 9 months, 8 months old, has 20 million Kenyans on the platform. 7 million Kenyans borrowing every day. And $300 million of borrowing in the last 8 months. It's about ordinary people borrowing small amounts, but making a big difference. Humanity is what we are speaking to. Whether we are talking about universal health coverage, we want to make it as available as possible. We are hiring community health promoters, 100,000 of them, so that every 100 households have somebody to think about them and their medical needs and health requirements. It's about people. And I want to ask the men and women in this team, even as you do what you're doing, front, center, left, right, is humanity. Ultimately, we must do the things that promote who we are as people. And we must never lose sight of the people. Sometimes they say, I don't know how they put it, they say either you get lost in the forest looking for the trees, or you look for the trees and get lost in the forest, one of the two. So we must never get lost. Even in the midst of all the things that we are doing, we must keep our humanity in focus.
Mr. President, we're very grateful for your welcoming us into your country, for all the hospitality that you and your team have shown us. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking His Excellency, President William Ruto.
Your Excellency, before exiting the stage, Your Excellency, just with your permission, if you can just have one picture with the CEO and also the leadership. If I may invite Senior Vice President Natasha Funk to join in the picture. PS ICT, John Tenui, if you can also come. PS Investment, Abu Bakar, and also we